We chatted a little bit about my favorite protein sources and for high protein snacks. And I thought, why not continue on with that theme and talk a little bit about fats as well. So, fats have gone through this wave of being demonized to now in some spaces fats are the best thing ever, and you can eat all the fat you want and all fats are fair game, and there's high fat diets now, and but there's still a lot of people that believe in low fat diets as well and try to minimize fat. And my opinion is I've messed around with both types of diets, and my opinion is probably merit to both approaches. I don't think that extreme high fat and extreme low fat is probably going to be healthy for most people. For some people, it may be, but for most people, they probably want to stay away from the extremes. And the benefit is probably somewhere in the middle, where there's some amount of healthy fat that is included into your diet. That's where I sit with my diet, and I find that most of my clients also seem to do fairly well. Is this middle ground approach where there's a healthy level of fat and a healthy level of carbohydrates and the right amount of protein. And a lot of people just get a little lost in, if I'm going to do high fat, then what are the best fat sources? Or regardless of the amount of fat in your diet, you might be also be wondering just what are the best sources of fat, because then there's also controversy around the types of fats that are the best, right? Are vegetable oils good? Are saturated fats good? Or are they bad? There are opinions on both, right? And so I think that having a little bit of suggestions for you to look for when it comes to fats in your diet is a good useful thing for a lot of people. So I thought I would share where most of my fats usually come from. And I'm going to start off by talking about, I'm not actually going to show you these, but I'll just talk about fats in general and fats that come from foods. Fats are generally part of different foods. Mostly you'll find fats coming from animal products, as well as fats that come from things like nuts and seeds and those types of things. Very occasionally, you might have a fat that comes from a vegetable or a plant source, but we'll talk about one of those today. But most dietary fats that we take in the foods that we eat are coming from animal products or things like nuts and seeds. So I wouldn't worry about too much about the fats that you get in whole natural foods, right? So if you're getting fats from the meat or the animal products that you're eating, or the dairy products that are coming from the animal products that you're eating, or some dietary fat from some things like nuts and seeds that you might be eating, worrying about specifically about the types of fats that are in them, whether they're good or bad, is probably not a useful exercise for most people, because honestly, we've evolved eating those fats for a long period of time and our bodies know what they are. They're natural fats coming from the foods that we're eating. So you can be pretty certain that the fats that you're getting from those products are going to be beneficial. In particular, there are two types of fats that people get a little bit more, or are worth talking about when it comes to natural fats. And the first one's going to be saturated fat. So you hear a lot about saturated fat and its connection with heart disease and cholesterol and things like that. There appears to be some correlation between when people eat more saturated fat that their cholesterol goes up. Now, whether that leads to disease, cardiovascular disease or not, is debatable, right? There appears to be evidence that shows that yes, the higher your saturated fat intake, the higher your cholesterol is, the greater the risk of heart disease can be. And there's also evidence coming out showing that is not the case as well. So we still have a long ways to go as far as deciding whether saturated fat is concerned. There also appears to be some people that respond worse to saturated fat intake than not, right? Some people can take in more saturated fat and they don't see their cholesterol move. And then there's other people that take in just a little bit of saturated fat and the cholesterol goes up. So there is multiple factors. There's the factor of, does saturated fat increase your cholesterol? is the first one. And then whether you believe that increase in cholesterol is actually going to be causative for cardiovascular disease for you. So this is not a simple answer. I'm not going to answer it in this question in this video, but it is something to keep in mind of. Certain animal products will have more saturated fat in them than others. And if that is a concern for you personally, then you want to be mindful of that. But ultimately, saturated fat is a natural fat that comes just in animal products in general. Then there's the other one I wanted to highlight that comes out of animal products are omega-3 fats. And these are usually found in marine products, I guess you'd say. So fish, right? Fish and sardines and oysters and things like that. Salmon. These are another type of fat. They're universally, for the most part, considered beneficial for us. It's also a type of fat that is not very prevalent in our diet. It gets overshadowed by omega-6 fats, which are coming from a lot of like seed oils, canola oil, cottonseed oil, those types of things. And we don't get a lot of it. A lot of people don't get a lot of it. And there's something called an omega-3 index, and that's quite pitifully low for most people. So if you're looking for another very beneficial fat, you that comes from animal products, you particularly want to focus on your fish products, those types of things. They usually have a lot of good omega-3 fats in them, and that can be quite beneficial for our health, especially for our cardiovascular health. And when we're talking about someone who might be pregnant or young kids, omega-3s are important for brain health as well. That's another natural fat that comes from animal products that you probably want to pay attention to as well. I obviously make an attempt to eat a lot of fish in my diet and get as many omega-3s as possible. But if you're not someone who likes fish, you can supplement with omega-3 fats. There's plenty of fish oil supplements out there that will provide those beneficial omega-3 fats for you without having to consume fish if that's not your thing. So with that said, I want to move on to some of my other favorite products that are included fats. And the one that I probably use the most, actually, I probably use on a daily basis, is this avocado oil spray. So are you familiar with this? It's like a spray on fat, right? It helps with non-stick stuff. I grew up with similar cans of this, but it was not avocado oil, I can tell you that. Avocado oil is we'll mention this again, is great because it's just a natural fat. Like it comes straight from avocados. And even though this says 0 calories on it, it's for a quarter-second spray, right? Fats are very calorically dense. You'll see that this is the only one that says 0 calories on it. But again, it's only for a quarter-second spray. Is anyone measuring quarter-second? No. There are calories in this, so just be mindful of that. But it's a pure natural fat. It has a very high smoke point, which means it doesn't oxidize until it gets super hot. So it's 500-degree smoke point, which is a good thing because once your fats start to oxidize, that's generally a bad thing when you're cooking with them. So I use this all the time for just a quick way to either spray my vegetables evenly, or I'll use it on pans that might have trouble sticking food to them, that type of thing. But I use this like on a daily basis. It is an added fat, just pure avocado oils. And I should probably mention I do have an avocado here somewhere. There it is. This is the only one that I use or eat on a regular basis that's a vegetable that has fat. So avocados are actually, I think they're a fruit because they have a seed inside them. But yeah, they're fruit, vegetable, whatever. And this is what avocado oil is made of. It's just made out of avocados, right? Which is nice. And they're pretty high in fat. They're also pretty high in fiber, very delicious. I could eat just avocados with sea salt sprinkled on them all day long. They go great with a whole bunch of things. Most people think of them in terms of Mexican food, but they go great with eggs. They go great on top of a salad. They're amazing. I love avocados. Then I have also your traditional avocado oil, right? Again, just avocado oil. It's just pure avocados. And this time we can see how calorically dense this is. This is going to be roughly the same for all fats. 1 tablespoon is about 120 calories. So a little goes a long way from a caloric point of view, but again, it has a very nice high smoke point. So if you're going to cook something that's pretty hot and you don't want the fat to oxidize and are worried about that, avocado oil is a great fat to use for that. I also use a fair amount of extra virgin olive oil, right? So we have this here. Again, very similar to avocado oil in that it's just made from olives, right? So you squeeze a bunch of olives, you get a bunch of oil out of it, and that's how you get avocado oil. Sorry, olive oil, and same thing with avocados. And those are great. I People can be very particular about their olive oil. I just look for something that's in a dark bottle. It says extra virgin on it. It's coming in a plastic bottle that's light, and you also need to pay attention to. Sometimes you can find something will say olive oil on it, but then it will say you'll read the back of it, and it's a mixture of seed oils and stuff like that. And if you have concerns about consuming seed oils like canola oil or cottonseed oil or those types of things, then you want to pay attention to that. But just look for extra virgin olive oil, read the back, make sure the only ingredient is olives, and you're pretty good. And again, this is going to be just as calorically dense as any other oil as well. So I use a fair amount of that too. Again, doesn't have a high smoke point. Avocado oil does, so just be mindful of that. It's great for salad dressings, low heat cooking, marinades, that type of stuff. Always have extra virgin olive oil on hand. One that I really love that doesn't get a lot of attention is truffle oil. I It's also pricey, honestly. Truffles are just mushrooms. This is white truffle oil infused with olive oil, so it's truffles and olive oil. It's just adds a nice flavor to things. I really like it on my vegetables. When I roast my zucchini or my Brussels sprouts, I'll use truffle oil if I have it around. Like I said, it's a little bit pricey because it is coming from mushrooms and truffles are a little pricey. But honestly, the flavor it adds to them, if you ever had truffle fries when you go out in the restaurant, like it has that flavor, and I really enjoy that. So that's a different one that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but I really am enjoying lately, and keep that on hand as well. Let's see. The other one I use here, not as much as the others, but we do have it in house and use it occasionally, is coconut oil. So extra virgin coconut oil. Again, as you can probably guess, this is just oil that's made out of coconuts. But you can see there's a bit of a difference here between like an olive oil and the extra virgin coconut oil. This one's solid and this one is liquid, right? At the temperature in my house right now. And that's because it's a different type of fat. Coconut, and the one that I'm going to talk about next is more saturated fat, right? So this is where you got to pay attention to, as opposed to monounsaturated fats in the olive oils and the avocado oil. And that type of fat makes a difference, right? It's solid at room temperature. But it again, if you want to pay attention to saturated fat, and that's a concern for you, then you want to maybe use coconut oil sparingly. I use it sparingly more because it has a distinct taste to it, honestly. So it only goes well with certain dishes, I find. So I'll generally use it if I'm making some type of stir fry. It tends to go well with those types of things. And so that's when I use it. Lots of baking recipes actually call for coconut oil too. So we'll use it for different type of baking as well. And actually, I'll mention just when we're talking about baking, avocado oil has a very neutral taste to it, so it's good for baking. So if a baking recipe calls for an oil, usually you want that oil to have a very neutral taste, and avocado oil has a very neutral taste as opposed to an olive oil, which can have a very olive oily taste, or coconut oil taste like coconuts. But yeah, we do keep coconut oil on hand. We do use it occasionally, but it's just not my go-to oil in terms of just everyday use. Just it calls for certain dishes or for baking and stuff like that. The last oil I will bring up is animal fats. So, like we talked about, we get fat from animal sources, and you can actually render down the fat from those animals and just bottle the fat up, which sounds maybe initially not such, such a good thing. It's just like eating the fat from the animal products that you're eating too. So, here I have some beef tallow. And again, so it's just grass-fed beef. It's basically beef fat. And so this again has a very distinct taste. You can see it's solid at room temperature, like coconut oil, meaning it's high in saturated fat. Out of the 14 grams of fat, half of that fat is saturated in this beef tallow. It's particularly is easier in particular cases. Honestly, I only use this when I am need to add fat to a meat that I might be cooking. So if I'm trying to sear a leaner meat on a pan, and there's not gonna be a lot of fat that comes naturally from the meat that I'm cooking on the pan, I'll add a little tallow to the pan just to help in the cooking process, which might defeat the purpose for some people because they're trying to eat a lean piece of meat. It helps just from time to time. For example, last night we were cooking some lean ground turkey for the kids for tacos, and if you just cook that in a cast iron pan, it can stick to the pan a little bit and get a little crusty because there's not a lot of fat in it. So I throw in. They're my kids. They need all the calories they can get. So I threw a little beef tallow in there with their ground turkey, just to help in the cooking process, give them a little bit extra fat as well and a little bit extra calories. We keep that on hand. I also, same thing with something like pork lard or duck fat, that type of stuff. We have some of that on hand. I just don't use it that often, but we do have it on hand. But those are really the fats that we keep around in our house, outside of the fats that we get from our diet, from the meat that we eat and the seafood that we eat. Those are the fats that we use most often. And I literally just went to my pantry and pulled those out. Those are the ones that we have there. That's my go-to fats. I think they're all great. Some have very specific use cases, some have very specific tastes. And so try them out. Find the ones that work for you based on your preferences and what you like to do. But those are my top healthy fats that I keep around in my house and I use most frequently. I'd love to hear which ones you use. Please leave comments below or reach out to me, or any way you want to let me know. It is cool with me. And so please leave your favorite fats below. The one thing, oh yeah, I did want to mention one other thing. The one thing that I didn't show here is nuts, right? So nuts are also, I mentioned it a little bit with nuts and seeds being a natural fat, but it might be, oh, why aren't your nuts make your list, or nut butters and stuff like that? I have no issue with them. They're not something that I use that frequently. They're very calorically dense, very easy to overeat. So I use them, I eat them on occasion. I'll use a nut butter on occasion, but they're not something I use on a daily basis, honestly, just because there's just a lot of calories in them, right? And so because fats are just so calorically dense, I just am very mindful about how I use them. Not because fat is bad, just because you can easily overconsume a lot of calories if you just go overboard on the fats a lot of times. But if you want to get some fats from nuts and seeds and nut butters, that's great. They're just not my thing. I'd just rather eat something else. So I just wanted to mention that as well. But yeah, please, if you are enjoying this content, let me know. And if you want to see more of the content that I put out, please join my newsletter. You can scan the QR code here in the video, or you can go to rjbhealth.coach, click on the newsletter link at the top, enter your email address there, and you can jump on the newsletter and get all the content that I put out on a weekly basis without having to stalk me. If you are interested in one-on-one coaching, please, I don't have any spots open at the moment, but I'm happy to chat a little bit more so that when I do have spots open, we can get together and start working together. If that's something you're interested in, you can just go to my website, rjbhealth.coach, click on the schedule discovery call button and fill out that form, and I will reach out to you. We can have a quick chat about that. And with that, I'll say goodbye. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll chat to you all next week.